Hey, Wendy, I want to just make a comment about something. And what's coming to my mind in making this comment are two things. Number one, you had mentioned that you're looking up this really old tree. Interestingly enough, that is the message of textures of this type. It's rough, it's curvilinear, it's somewhat side lit, not side lit, I'm sorry, lit in a way from the, well, yeah, side lit, yes, but, and as you look up, you're able to see pockets of shadows and highlight, of course. But I don't have any doubt when it comes to trees, the age of this tree is old. Again, that's indicated by the texture. And here's what's interesting about that. When we think of a smooth baby's bottom, you photograph that, and no one will argue that that is a young human being, even if it's just the bottom butt cheeks. Likewise, as one ages, that skin becomes much like the bark of this tree. So we immediately make the assumption smooth versus rough. Rough must mean age, experience, wisdom, and we don't assign those very words to a smooth butt cheek, okay? And my point in this is simply that there are, unfortunately, some subjects that are born with the wise, wrinkled, old butt cheeks. And I'm wondering if you have any idea what I'm talking about. It certainly isn't this tree, but I was reminded in looking at this tree of what it must be like to be a Sharpen dog, okay? These are those wrinkly dogs that are born old and wise at birth. A little puppy, poor guy, looks old and wrinkly. And I was thinking, are there trees that are born like this? And I don't know of any. Most trees start out, yes, with some degree of rough texture. But as time goes on, that texture becomes more wide, more pronounced, and subsequently we assign to that tree a young tree that has the future full of wisdom, or an old tree that's already wise. In any event, just for some reason that triggered this response. As far as this image is concerned, love the looking up point of view immensely. I like it a lot. I like the fact as well that we're using a radial design here of the tree, much like a sunrise, almost like the Japanese flag, where this is the sun itself and then there's the rays of light. Good stuff, really nice. Another texture here. Interestingly enough, and I will point this out because of the color green, you may or may not realize the implications of a photograph like this, but it does suggest, despite the fact that the texture itself can be arguably texture that's old, because of the rough feel nature of it, but yet it has a certain degree of youthfulness, if only because of the predominance of the color green, which of course is the symbol of hope, new beginnings, also the symbol of fertility and youth. So this one is interesting in that regard because it's both a texture, somewhat rough, but again, a youthful texture. So shall we call it a youthful image that's a bit hardened by a life on the street? I don't know, something like that. But anyway, I like this image as well. I like this diagonal line coming in through here that adds a nice, really nice tension to it. But overall, we're doing the suggestion of thirds. And then this little pocket down here, I like the fact that it's a little shift in contrast. And at the same time, there's these diagonal lines, which is really nice in my opinion. So really, really nice. And then there's a nice stabling line of tonal shift up here at the top. So Wendy, once again, a really nice composition. And then finally, your wide angle shot, massive depth of field, all that good stuff. The only issue I have with this, it's a small minor issue. I don't like the fact that this is kind of stopping almost in the middle. It may appear that you were running this all the way over a full 2/3, but you didn't quite make it. And I would go so far as to come up with something along these lines, which then makes it a more obvious 1/3, 2/3. And I think you'll see that here, obviously, like so, and like so, and like so, and like so. Now, the argument that your horizon line is running right through the middle doesn't become an issue, and I want to stress to you why that is. The reason is because of the diagonal line. Okay, I want to make a point here, and I'm going to try to do this with the clone tool just so you understand. You can get away with running the horizon line in the middle of the frame sometimes. And when you do that, 9 times out of 10, you're getting away with it because of the diagonal line. Now, clearly in the absence of the diagonal line here, this really screams split 50-50, okay? But the reason we don't pick up on that is simply because of the amount of movement here caused by all the diagonal lines. Okay, so we don't get caught and trapped in the middle where the image is static. It was static if I run the tracks all the way across, which of course I didn't. You could have just as easily set the camera down, let's say right about here, and then you'd have these two converging parallels. That would create a problem because you'd have all these horizontal lines running 50-50. So just something to keep in mind. Next time out, 2 things actually to keep in mind. Run this diagonal line further over so you're right about, well, that's a bad job, right about there, and you'll be just fine. All right? Week number 3, where's the time go? That's always a question I have to ask myself. It'll be here before we both know it, and until that time, you keep shooting and keep being creative, because my God, you're doing well. See you next week.